Hey, good evening. Welcome to Conversations with Friends, episode 2, actually. And we're going to get this puppy and party started off right. We have a very, very distinguished guest, and he's been on the platform plenty of times, and we appreciate his time, his expertise in this issue, and being able to have a very, very interesting topic because sometimes we may not realize it, but sometimes as parents, you're always critical and judging yourself off of the child's actions. So you base your criteria whether you were a good enough parent sometimes based off the child, and that probably isn't always the case. So the topic of our conversation is what happens when you fall short as a parent. Welcome, Elliot, my distinguished co-host, Melodiq. Would you like to take it away?
Hey, hey. Hello, everyone. Thanks so much for joining us, Elliot.
Thank you. Thank you for having me again. I'm glad you guys are doing this again. I told you yesterday, like this is one of my favorite things to do when we was like really in the midst of it and doing multiple shows and everything. I felt like it was just completely necessary to have certain conversations, and I was just thankful to be able to contribute and thankful to be back to do it again.
Excellent. We hope you'll be on a lot more of our shows. We appreciate your input, seriously, and our conversations.
Yeah, right. Absolutely.
So what happens when you fall short as a parent? I think I can kick this one off. I'm actually I'm not going to pick number one on my list. I'm going to switch it up a little bit. Okay, so here's my first one. When you fall short on education, I think nowadays a lot of parents tend to let the electronical devices raise the kids, the tablet, the computer, YouTube, the internet. Excuse me. And I feel like some parents, in order to free up their time, they saddle the kids with these devices. And half the time, they don't even know what's going on these devices. They don't know what these kids are picking up. The kids have free access or free reign to search the web. And there are some really harming and damaging things that they can see on television as well. What do you guys think?
I mean, that's a definite. Obviously, right now I'm teaching 10th, 11th, 12th grade in North, and I think what's happening from my perspective is a lot of parents who have kids, it's not an intentional thing that they're deciding to do when they're laying down to create children. And when you're ill prepared financially, now the burden becomes greater as far as not having the time or the perception that you don't have time, because I got to work 2 jobs, because I got a 12-hour shift. So now the fatigue kicks in, you get home, and a kid who might be struggling, and like I teach geometry. 6 hours, 7 hours out of the day in the school is not enough for the child to leave the school and then go home and have no more exposure with the things that they're struggling with at school. But if you get home and your parents, either don't know it or they don't think it's important, they just hope that you get a C and just pass so you can just be done with it, which strangely, a lot of parents, have that attitude when it comes to, math or science or, like subjects like where they feel like, well, just do what you got to do to pass. Don't try to get an A. Don't even try to get a B. Just pass. Just get a C. Just get through it. But sitting down with your child to help them try to find the answers, even if you don't know what they're, necessarily what they're doing, is still more helpful than just saying, boy, get out my face. Your food is in the microwave. Leave me alone. And now you're on your phone on social media while they're there, scratching their head, trying to figure out how to BS their way through a homework assignment, and a lot of parents, they it's not for lack of love. Sometimes it is, and sometimes it ain't, but effort and wanting to be there for the hard stuff as a parent, especially as your kids get older, that means everything to their development. But a lot of that stuff is hindered because you're in the struggle when you decide to have kids.
Agreed. But I have a quick question, because my thing is, okay, so right, no one is perfect, and we all agree with that, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
But when you recognize that you're falling short, right, as a parent, and it may be a subject that you did not excel in at school, totally fine. But then why not equip your kid with the right tools to overcome whatever hurdles you weren't able to overcome, right? So why not reach out to the teacher? So you said you teach 10th, 11th, and 12th grade students, right? Why not reach out to the teacher and say, hey, Mr. Elliott, hi, how are you? I know you're very concerned about the students, but I'm struggling here as a parent because these lesson plans are, totally go over my head. So is there a mentorship program? Is there a tutoring program? Is there some type of, website that you can recommend that can actually help, reinforce this education that I'm trying to give my child, even though I may be ill-equipped? Yeah. But a lot of people don't want, I find that a lot of people don't want to admit that they fall short. And two, when you don't admit that you fall short, you're doing your kid a disservice as a parent.
Pride. I mean, we've had conversations about we just talked about all the shows and the different things, but a lot of the underlying things with a lot of the subject matter that we talk about is pride, relationships, pride, your job circumstances, pride, not wanting to admit or seem weak. That's pride, right. Not wanting to admit that you need help. Pride,
So let me ask you, Elliot, because Melodiq touching on education and devices, and we know that during the pandemic, how a lot of it exposed, in my opinion, how a lot of parents have used the school system as the babysitter. And we know that the devices are the do something because you're bored type of thing, or I'm doing this, so I have to catch up on house duties. So here, take this tablet and play the game or whatever. Let me ask you, as an educator, what parent do you prefer? And I say that in a way, you come across the parent who don't care? And not saying they don't love their child, they just don't have the time to even get to know who you are. Yeah. Or do you prefer the parent that wants to know who you are, wants to know your background a little bit, wants to know who's going to be teaching my child?
Yeah.
What type of parent do you prefer to deal?
Well, before we started school in August, I sent out, and this is my first year, teaching at that school and teaching the subject, because my background is in English, obviously. But I went out of my way. I went through. We have something called Parent Square, where it's a device where we have to make weekly calls to parents, and I got a list of the students that were in my class. In my classes, I had 4 sections, and I just sent out a mass email, to every parent, introducing myself and trying to create that, open that portal, for connectivity between myself and the parent. And then the thing is also that's important that I wanted to implement is, too often as a teacher, I've seen other teachers, the only time they communicate with parents is when it's time to reprimand a student. I let the parents know, hey, they're doing well. They had a great week this week. you know, I just want to let you know they're doing well and you should be proud of them. Because then when it's time to reprimand, it won't just seem like that's all you're reaching to do.
Right.
You know, so I try to have the positive reinforcement there as well. But I did that very early on to try to lay that foundation, and I barely got any emails back, you know, saying, "Oh, thank you," you know, or looking forward to talking to you, you know. And I don't know what's behind that. You know, I can't. One of the reasons I don't have any biological children. I had one opportunity uh, about 12 years ago, and my finances were completely in the toilet. Completely in the toilet. I was 27. I graduated from King the previous year, and I had just started substitute teaching, and I had no money in the bank. And the person I was with at the time, you know, kind of came to me and said, "Hey, what do you want to do?" And I said, "I love you. I want us to have children, but right now, neither one of us are in any kind of predicament to know that we'll be prepared 9 months from now when that child is here." So she had an abortion. It was the worst. It was a irresponsible because I wasn't 17. I was like 27. And, you know, it bothered me, and it's bothered me since then, you know. But who's to say that if we had that kid, we still don't separate, which we end up separating not too long after that? Who's to say, you know, that now I would have had, you know, my child in a deficit because I made a decision out of lust, which most of us do. And now your child is suffering for that because you weren't ready. And all of that stuff is a trickle down effect. Because if I'm struggling now financially and I made a lustful decision, now I got to work more. Now I'm away from my child more, or the burden of raising my child falls to somebody else. And that just has become too much of a norm with us. And it's not to say that it's a black thing, because it's white families, white people do it too. Hispanic people do it too. I don't ever want it to come. I hate that narrative as well. Like all white families are like, you know, these great families that have foundational things in place everywhere. That's just not the case. It's an individual decision, you know, that we make, and we make those decisions a lot of times without really critically thinking about, you know, what are we going to be subjecting our children to by who we decide to have our children with, where we're at in our lives when we decide to lay down and do those kind of things. And then, you know, everything else kind of the legs get taken out from underneath everything else. And the child has to grow up with those blank spots, you know, those fill in the blanks in their life because of their parents. And I didn't want that to be me, you know, but I see so many of the parents, and it's just obvious, you know, that they're doing the best that they can, but they definitely made a rash decision and they were not prepared. And by
We're
virtue, now their kids will not be prepared, and they'll be struggling, and they'll have a tainted, jaded view of life because I was born. I didn't ask to be here, and now I'm here, and the people that brought me here aren't prepared to raise me.
I
Mm.
think that we,
Sorry.
we we appreciate you sharing your personal story with us, and you know, sometimes, and I always say this about parenting, and I mean what I'm about to say. It does not come with an
From
instruction.
experience.
It doesn't come with an instruction kit.
Yeah,
What comes after is afterbirth.
yeah,
The instructions don't come out after the child; it's afterbirth. And like Melodic can attest to it, as a parent, you're always questioning whether you failed them. One thing that Melodic and I can say from a personal point with our friendship, um, one of the words that she always uses when we do have conversations, talks, shows, and I've learned to have this with my mom who's deceased, is learning to have that grace.
mm,
Because when you have a parent and you know you have multiple children, one child go this way, quote unquote, the other child go this way. And then as a parent, you like, I brought them up in the same household. They had the same tools. They're just different.
People. They're
So,
different people. Right.
and nobody can explain why that happens.
Nope.
But as the parent, you're always questioning, why they view the world they do and why they act the way they act. And, one of the things that you touched on, and I think that is major, and getting back to um, how we were and understanding what we consider the nuclear family is doing everything with a purpose, everything with intention. If you meet somebody who you like, who you're digging, having intention and being purposeful with every aspect of your relationship, because what could potentially happen? She get pregnant. Now, back in the day, a lot of people may not know, there was a thing called shotgun weddings. And why
Yeah, definitely.
the ancestors and the elders did that to us was, boy, you gonna be responsible. Um, my grandfather, he had to drop out of school to take care of his family, and you didn't have that option, that pregnancy back then. And if you did, it wasn't the safest way. And uh, being in the situation that you're in, and like we said, financially, the mother or the father may not be able to be as present because having two jobs, because cost of living is so high, and getting their child the necessary. Like a lot of people don't know, like Elliot, and I know you can explain that the massive amount of resources that's allocated for after school programs, but nobody utilizes.
Right.
And let me explain. Let me ask you, Elliot, from someone who has an artistic background like yourself,
Mm.
who somebody tapped into your talent outside of just being an educator, and you saw people in that field invested in you. How is it when you see a child that, okay, geometry ain't their thing, and I know that their parent went to school with me, so we learned math a whole different way,
Yeah,
and this is the struggle that's going on.
yeah,
What do you like? Because I know it's a balance. Because now you're not just a teacher. Now you're stepping into that guidance counselor role, and it's like people get a little upset because you're stepping on their toes. How is that balance with that?
uh the thing is, I like my way of building camaraderie with my students is through humor. So the first thing that I said first day, I said, listen, I know y'all not into geometry. I'm not into geometry either, and I'm your teacher, teaching it, teaching it. So don't get it twisted. We're in this fighting for these answers together. But I'm gonna put you, and I have a co-teacher named Miss Taggart, and she's like more the brains of the operation, and I work more with the special education students to try to accommodate and modify the lesson plan, to try to help them with the things that they don't understand. So I make modifications all the time. I put them in small groups in the classroom, and we break down the things that Ms. Taggart is explaining. We break it down where it's digestible, for those students, because the majority of my classrooms have about 7 to 10 specialized learners in it, and I'm also in calculus as well, but I also work primarily with the special education department.
Are
So
they are they
it's just
able?
it's just about making it digestible, as you can, and then keeping data, you know looking at trends and data allows you to go back and see, okay, let's see the consistency, the baseline for what's going on for this student, and then from there we can come together as a team and try to combat it. That's all we've been doing these first 2 months. They've been taking a lot of state testing, and they have the seniors have the PSAT coming up next Friday. So I do my best to just make my self available during the day. I mean, it's a lot because I have to lesson plan on all my preps. But at the end of the day, when I can leave at 4 o'clock, I stay at about 4:45 and leave my door open for kids to come in, with their grievances and the things that they're struggling with, you know. But I got to twist their arms, and then I got to, obviously, be going back to the parents. You got to get the parents involved and let them know, hey, we want to run this tutoring, process. So these are the things that we try to do to try to build that sense of, okay, well, he's giving more than what he has to, He's not just saying, oh, they don't know it, let's fail them. You know, he's giving me an opportunity to come in and, you know, really allow for us to have extra time during the week for that help. And that's all I try to do.
So you basically make yourself available and you try to be a mentor to these students. So that's amazing. There are lots of teachers out there like that, but then there are some teachers who basically it's a job for them. They want to get in, get out, and that's it. They don't want to put forth that extra effort to go above and
I'm sorry to cut you off, but I just have to get this out. A lot of the teachers, they're afraid of the students that they're teaching.
Okay.
And especially in urban areas.
Okay.
They're afraid to ruffle feathers with behavior. And the minute you find yourself like this is like this is an island I'm trying to fight my way off of from 7:30 in the morning till 4 o'clock when we leave, then how you do your job suffers because you can't really be as open with the kids and you can't build that camaraderie that makes them want to learn from you.
Indeed. Sometimes the kids just want to know that you care.
Yeah. And when they start to see that, their defense, you know, mechanisms will come down. And now I can teach without having to deal with the attitude that's inherent in every like teenage kid, you know, like, you know, and it's easy to say that, but then you got to figure, well, a lot of them are going home. They got 4 or 5 brothers and sisters. You know, they're barely eating. They're not sleeping at night. And that, coming back to the parenting side of it, you don't know just because me and this person was good when we had a kid that they're not going to turn on you. It happens all the time. A person's one way when you meet them, you trust them, and then they're another way. And I know we all have experiences with that, you know, but the things that you can control as a parent, if I've made a mistake, if I didn't know something when I was 15, 16 years old, now it's my responsibility to take the things that I didn't learn until I was like 30 years old. And now I want to cut that learning process in half for my kids. If it took me to be 30 years old to find out stuff like, you know, things like W-2s, things like credit, things like, you know, interest rates, like you can sleep better at night if you know at least I attempted to drive this stuff home with my kids early so there wasn't a culture shock when they turned 23, 24 years old about what this stuff is and what it looks like. For so many of us, it's a culture shock. Parents never sat down with us early.
And for me, Elliot, I would have probably been a student in your class that would have came there and loved your jokes. And the reason why is because a lot of younger people in inner cities, they're not going to school to learn. They're going to school as it's a process in their ability to navigate the struggle. Like you said, a lot of them got multiple siblings at home. A lot of them don't even know where they're going to get their next meal. So school is just an outlet. And in having that as an outlet, like you said, using teaching as a method, like you got to have geometry, you got to know math, and no matter what field you decide to go on, as far as education, I'm gonna ask you, Elliot, do you think? And this is I think a shift that may have happened and may need to re-happen again as we have delved into this technology age and realizing that we need more plumbers, more electricians, more uh, auto workers, stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think that we need to bring vocation hands on to get the kids more active with their hands and like it's an overload, a brain overload, and more just hands and understanding how gifted you can be with using your hands and stuff like that. Do you think it's a major shift that needs to happen?
You want to put that out there as an option for your children. You want to, you know, have them understand that there's more than 2 to 3 ways to skin a cat. There's a lot of things you can do. If I as a parent because I've been indoctrinated with the idea that you got to go to college no matter what. You got to go. You got to go. You got to go. But I'm sending them without any, idea of what they want to do with their lives. So now they're just picking any kind of major, whether it's me paying for it or whether they get, the grant, the FAFSA grant and everything like that, and they get a whole, boatload of money to go. But now they're taking a major that is not, they're not going to be able to easily find a job, or they're going to have to like jump through more hoops to find ways to compensate. Then, I may say to my son, when we're going to the barbershop, I may nudge him and say, you wonder how, your pops, when I did have hair, how your pops, his fade is tight. You could do that. You want to learn how to do that? Maybe I'll plant that seed and maybe it'll spark an interest. And now my son has something in his back pocket that can always make him money. It's as a parent, like as your kids grow up, they send signs. They send signals. Oh, they're taking a liking to this. And it may not be a conventional thing, but there's enough information out there that when I see it, when I see that sign, or when I see that they're venturing that way, I'm gonna pour into them and give them all the information I can give them, in that area. And then they're gonna have multiple things in their lives, multiple times where they're switching things constantly, especially as teenagers. They'll start off wanting to do this, or then they'll turn into, well, I'm interested in that. And that's how it is with Bella. Like Nick, like Bella is so multi-talented and multifaceted. First she's crocheting, then she's dancing. Then you're like, so I'm like, okay, crocheting. You can start your own business. Like, you're great at making clothing. Let me show you how to make this YouTube page. You know what I'm saying? And then you can do tutorial videos, and then we can see where that goes. But it's all about just, tapping into what you see that interests your child, and then just, working with them to find the answers to how to make that, profitable and viable for them when they become adults.
I
So
just
that's what I try to do.
point out that, excuse me, Elliot referenced Bella. Bella is Elliot's stepdaughter. So even though he doesn't have a biological child, he does perform the role of a step parent, which is pretty awesome. Also, yeah.
One of the aspects in trying to really get a grasp for this type of topic and understanding as a parent when you fall short is, I believe that being a good parent comes from healing yourself, reparenting yourself, and understanding what you went through as a child. Nobody wants nobody to do more better for them in life, but the parent for their child. Everybody wants their child to be better than them.
Breaking those generational curses, Q.
And with that, teaching, a boy, and I know that it may be gender specific when you say teaching a boy how to hunt, teach him how to fish, teaching him, showing him what we deem to be masculine and being able to protect, provide, to, as we would say, Elliot, to be a man's man. And with that, I know that as a parent, we may feel like we've fallen short because, like you said, I'm trying to provide. I'm working 2 and 3 jobs. Like, you start to overcompensate. Like, time is money, but I need money to do what I got to do, and it's like I'm not.
To create
I'm not
times
as much as possible. I know for me, on a personal level, when my dad passed away, and his parents, I think my grandparents were, they probably kind of felt as though that I was not going to be as close with them as possible when my father died. And I got very close to them after they died, which is interesting. And I say that to say, like, they became my friends. Like, they invested in me, but they really got a chance to know who I was, how I thought. And in hindsight now, they were prepping me to be the person I am today. We're understanding, like, as a parent, like I said, you're always going to second guess your decisions based off of how your child is. And you may feel like you're falling short. And this is why Melodiq and her wisdom using this topic is so interesting with picking this topic is because you're always going to think you're falling short as a parent.
Okay, but you know what, Q, I'm going to play the devil's advocate here. So, what about that age-old phrase, I'm not your friend, I'm your parent?
Well,
So
that
I just want to know. So where's the line drawn between having a friendly interaction with your children and being a friend to them, as opposed to being a parent to them and trying to guide them in the right direction, and with the knowledge that you've acquired over the years?
well, I would think like, and I use that definitely in my case. With understanding what you said, sometimes you do have to say that. You do have to draw that line. Like, but one of the things that I'm learning is to be a good listener to what they're saying, and when we had the conversation earlier, what they're not saying. What are they not saying? What am I missing out on? Um,
Yep.
are you giving them the positive affirmations on how you feel about their life? You telling them, look, I'm proud of you. I love you. This, down, and third. And are you trying to, like Elliot said, prevent them from learning about certain things that you learned later? How to really understand how to invest your money, bank accounts. And it's a very thin line because you know your child. So you have to push on the gas pedal and release off the gas pedal. And and
Absolutely.
and and
Finding that
then
balance.
yeah, and then sometimes and I know if they're in your home, it's a whole different aspect.
The
Indeed.
pulling, the
Yeah.
pulling you out of laziness, discipline. That's the part where now I'm a parent, and you're not gonna like me. You're not gonna like me when I tell you to clean up that damn room. And if you use a dish, you wash the dish right then and there. You don't just let it pile up in the sink. I'm gonna annoy you. My grandmother, forgive me, because my mother's mother, she passed away right before COVID in 2020. And my father's mother raised me. And it was always in East Orange. And she raised me after, getting into it with my mother's mother. They had a combative kind of relationship because my mother's mother was more about giving me the things I wanted. My father's mother was more about giving me the things I needed. And it got to a point where I was more looking forward to being around my mother's mother. Because as a kid, you're running away from the person who is giving you the things that you don't know you need when you're 11, 12, 13 years old. She would make me vacuum and dust furniture every Saturday morning and iron all my clothes. Even if they were not wrinkled, iron the clothes. She'd get me an old worn rag and a can of lemon pledge and make me dust the entire bookcase, the entertainment center, the coffee table, the fine china. And she wanted you to know this is your home. You need to take pride in where you live.
Indeed.
And to this day, if I see a shirt just on the edge of a chair or a coat that hit the floor, it's just intrinsic in me. I got to pick that up and hang it up right now. Those lessons, you annoyed as shit about it, but it was what you didn't know you needed when you were 12, and you're better off for having learned those lessons.
He's
And
preparing you for life.
and I can't. There's it's unquantifiable what I owe her, and I getting choked
It's,
up a little bit because she's in the last leg of the race. She's in Jackson right now. She's fighting for her life in a nursing facility. She can't even be home because she can't move. And I've let her down a little bit because I haven't been there to see her as much as she deserves me to be there. I, more than anybody, when she decided to raise me after she had raised her children, and she dedicated the time in her life that was meant for leisure to making sure that I had a shot in life after my mother was murdered. And with my father's drug addiction, her son, I remember he would come by the screen door, bang on the door, and it was just obvious he was just messed up. And she told me to go in the room. She wouldn't let me see my father like that. And she'd go outside and close the door. She she didn't know I was looking out the other window to see what they were talking about. And she just put money in his hand. And she tell him, get yourself together before you come back here and see this boy. And I can't, to watch somebody who is so independent and strong, who's responsible for you being here, and to know you can't do nothing about it, and it's just life. It's like it's just so unfair. It's so unfair, but that's parenting.
Absolutely. And well, that's more than parenting, honestly.
It's more than parenting.
Because it carried over into the next generation where she took on the parent role, Exactly. That's amazing.
One thing, Elliot, is that when we do have these conversations, they tend to go a little we would probably say off topic when you're always judging everything that you do and you want to do the show the quote unquote right way. But one thing about these shows is that and we why we appreciate guests like yourself, and because we're, as we would just say, we're just ordinary people, right? Mm-hmm. And we're living the life experience and understanding that. And it's a phrase that has been going around that one of the people quoted, man, and I never really appreciated the phrase till you was talking. Sometimes you look at when someone's talking and you look at your own life, and it goes back to the adage: good times build weak men, tough times build strong men.
That's my favorite quote in the world. I post that all the time.
Yeah, and you really understand that, from a parenting aspect, me and my mom, we did not have a great relationship. I was the youngest of five, but our relationship was crazy. You know what I mean? And from the outside looking in, even when she passed away, and we went to the funeral home to take care of everything. The funeral director knew us as a family. He told us told him what we wanted, and all her kids showed up, and we didn't argue nothing. And he was like, you guys, it's a bunch of y'all. Why y'all didn't have problems? And what I mean by that is that even in her death, she prepared us for that. Yeah. And sometimes, as the child, we may view a thing that was not good for us, and in reality, those things were good for us. And I can speak for a child that sometimes you be like, yo, my upbringing is effed up. I've been in a bad situation. Then when you become of age, you be like, yo, I thought I was messed up. People that really had it made, they're messed up adults now. And the people I knew that had a messed up upbringing, they're better people. They're better people, and they're giving their children more and more than they ever had. And it's a interesting thing. And bad parenting can become good parenting with correction and understanding and being able to connect. And I know, Elliot, you sharing your personal experience is not always easy. Definitely when we do it online, but
I mean,
sometimes other
the
people.
things that are easy in life, you find out they're flimsy. They're not worthwhile. The hard things last. The hard conversations, all the way down to the things we buy. We gotta buy something for cheap, and that's the first thing that breaks. Like I know for myself, and I've been afforded a wonderful opportunity that I didn't know I would come across. Um, and it's not about trying to be superhuman or anything like that. That's how it gets defined later on, as somebody who you raise looks back on your involvement in their upbringing. They'll be like, wow, that person was like Superman. My mom was Superwoman. I'm sure that's how your kids, whether they tell you or not internally, to do everything you've done. I remember coming down to your house for the first time and to just see how much pride you took in your home, and you did every day, and yeah, you're gonna, ruffle some feathers, and you're gonna be a hard ass, but that's hard. That's hard. Like I got kids here, and now they growing up a little bit, and they think they can whoop my ass, and but I'm gonna hold down this fort, like, and to do it alone. I
I
always,
put the Vaseline on the
I
scarf and the
tell you,
Vaseline.
I have a lot of respect
Thank
for you.
you. Thank you.
And
You
just
know,
seeing the couple times that I went down before I
Elliot,
really even knew you, but Treasure would always speak highly of you,
and
like
that's the
like a
thing.
bigger sister, like a big sister to her.
That's the thing, Elliot, that I think
Yeah,
is so interesting about this co-host of ours, right? She comes up with these topics, and it's like, okay, and it makes me reflect as a parent, and then understanding that you're never going to feel like you don't. Everybody, oh, I'm gonna work. I'm gonna get them what they didn't get, what I didn't get. I'm gonna do this. I'm gonna make sure they got a stable upbringing, education, food, clean clothes. I'm gonna be there emotionally for them. But it might be the child or the son or daughter who be like acting up, and you be like, was it me? No, it wasn't me.
yeah,
Okay.
right.
But the thing is about it is that like I always, and I'm gonna keep saying it, don't come with instructions. You just do your best, man, and really sometimes, and we need to do this more often. Sometimes you need to pat yourself on the back.
We asked, like the question was like, you know, how do you define failure as a parent? To me, all failure is not being honest always with your children. The good, the bad, the ugly. I'm gonna be honest with you. You'll never be able to say that I lied to you. And I
Mm,
think that's just a thing about human interaction
Absolutely.
that needs to be, and I think there's too much goodwill in not being honest in general in life,
Mm.
because the truth can get you canceled, can get you hated, and get you, so who wants that? Who wants that scarlet letter on their chest of being the only truth teller in the room?
But what about living with integrity? Honestly, I'm going to be honest with you, E. I think sometimes my kids probably think I'm a little too honest.
Yeah, and that's the boundary. That's the line.
Indeed.
Is
Indeed.
especially when you say you're separated from your children's co-parent, and it's something you don't discuss because it's an adult thing. It's not for kids.
I
And
think
you
the relationship
still go ahead and you
should stay
talk to
between
them
the
about
parents.
you talking
Right.
to them about their father, or the father, talks to them about the mother. I don't. It's honest, but is it appropriate? You're always walking that line, when
Yeah,
things go south like that, But
I think
that's
that you
all
should
just a
always allow
feel thing,
kids to be kids.
Yeah, you need to be kids too.
Right, right.
So
You
you're
always
walking that fine line between I want you to understand what's real,
right.
but I'm gonna let you grow. And I think another thing about failing too is pushing your belief system onto your children. That's a failure to me. I don't it I mean, I grew up church. It's like, no, you're going to church. You don't get your ass, you don't go to church. You don't believe in the God that I believe in because I know what's best for you. And now you're kind of strong armed and, you know, putting a full Nelson, like, you know, like, oh, you know, and it may not be your path in that regard, your spiritual path. That's something you have to discover on your own. So I'll always view it as a failing to impart, you know, the things that I grew up believing onto my kids. I'll tell them, hey, this is what I believe, and this is why I believe it. You know, and I want you to believe in something. It don't necessarily have to be what I believe in, but I want you to believe in something. I want you to stand for something. I want you to discover what that is. Stand in it, you know what I'm saying, and all of that, you know, but that to me is something that I struggled with growing up, was this sense of I don't want to disappoint my grandmother who raised me. My mother's mother was more religious and drove that stuff home more than my father's mother did. My father's mother really didn't go to church. She didn't really, you know, they both rural South women, but one was from South Carolina and she believed you go to church all day, 10 hours a day. Vacation Bible school. You know, and you stay for second and third service. We get home at 8, 9 at night on the Sunday.
Oh my.
And she believed that. And she wanted me to believe it too, because she wanted me to have that centeredness. But as I got older, I'm like, you know, do I believe this? You know, and we had some tug of wars when I became a fully realized man that I didn't buy a lot of stuff that was in those scriptures, you know, but
One of the things Nick had to drop for a second. She'll be back. One of the things that I realized, Elliot, is hold on, you guys. We good. We good, you guys. So Melodiq, I know we had some technical difficulties, you guys. So just bear with us. Um, Nick, you wanted to touch on a point before we close out, right?
Yes. Okay, so I touch on the point. As a parent, you have to be understanding. It's not always about um, oh, this is what you need to do, and I have a final say or what have you. You are human. That's first and foremost. So you make mistakes also. You also need to give them room to make mistakes because they are going to make mistakes. It just is what it is. But you absolutely have to make sure that you give them that room to develop and be who they are. And also give them the room to come for guidance because they trust your opinion.
yeah. Everything is about grace. I think a lot of times, you know, we forget, like, to be a parent and forget that you were once a teenager is a felony. You know, like all of a sudden now you're a parent, you old, and you act like you were never there and never had those emotions that your kids may be having at that time. And to extend that grace to them the way you wanted it extended to you when you were in that time and place. And, you know, you needed it from your parent, you know. It's always remembering, you know, hey, I've fallen short, you know, so I'm gonna give you what you need, but I'm also gonna, at the end of that, I'm gonna bring you close to me and say, hey, I still love you. You know, I'm still there for you. I'm not gonna quit on you, you know, just because you made this mistake. Because those things, not having that balance, that drives an, you know, eternal state between you and your kids. You know, I've seen a lot of my friends, a couple of them, you know, we get into those conversations like they haven't spoken to their parents in 10, 15 years. It's like they wanted me to succeed so much, but they didn't show me the other side of what that looked like. And they didn't view us having a great relationship as success. They were too concerned about how much money I was going to make or what profession, and want me to, you know, live on their terms and, you know, and you know, pretty much they didn't realize their dreams, so they wanted to impose their dreams onto me and wanted me to live, you know, vicariously through me or whatever the case may be. Especially when you get like a lot of my friends, they play, you know, my cousin, his friend is in the NFL right now. You know, but that journey for him to get there drove such a wedge between him and his father because, you know, when you get to athletics, you know, and you know how hard a dad could be on a, you know, you want that kid to have that success. Being, I played in the NFL, but damn, like, what did it cost us? You know, like, so you got to have that balance. You got to definitely have that balance.
I it's funny. It's funny that we done jumped on this topic because one thing I realized, right even within the last year, man, is I've become a worry wart. Um, we have an app on the phones where literally I'll be checking to see where they at. Like, yo, I need to know where you at. And it's weird because I had a conversation with my son about him being a parent, and I told him, I said, you know, you never stop being a parent. Even though you get the child get older and grown and start having their own family, you never stop. It just may shift into a different aspect of how you parent, but you never stop. You never stop worrying. Um, you never stop wanting to help guide the nurturing, the guidance. You never stop that. You just got to just continue to do it a better way than you may have did it yesterday. And your the word fail is so or fall is so interesting because you always judge yourself and think that you're not doing enough. Even when you when you know that you gave them way better than what you had, you still gonna be like, you know. And then even sometimes now, when I look at my son's life and what he's doing now at his age, compared to what I was doing at his age, I'd be like, man, you know, you guys know. We knew the subway system like the back of our hand in New York. Me and Elliot didn't even grow up in New York, but we knew the
Yo,
subway. Now most of our kids would be fish out of water if they had to go in the subway. They'd be like, "Well, I get uptown. I don't know where do I catch the connection at."
Now I
that's
can
something I definitely took for
will say
granted.
that my kids have not given up their New York connection. They are definitely Harlem children.
Yeah,
They know how to get all around, all over in the city. That's one thing that they're not willing to give up. I just wanted to
good.
make you guys laugh real quick. But right now, so this is what I'm working on mastering as a parent.
Mhm.
Okay. So my new thing is giving them the space to express themselves when they're talking about their life situations, whether it's their personal situation, friends, etc. Or they notice something about someone. Let's say a family member, um, and I don't want to force my opinion on them, so I give them the room, to talk and tell me. Well, and they'll be like, well, such and such and such and such and such and such, mom, and I'm like, oh, okay. So what makes you feel that way? And they're like, oh, okay. Like you haven't noticed that? Of course I notice it. I probably won't say that I notice it, but I want to know what you think. I want to know what your observation is. One, it gives me a gauge on how developed you are mentally. But also, to me, it gives you the room to express how you're feeling, how this person or this interaction made you feel. So I think that's very important in allowing them to. I think you should give your kids guidance, but you should also allow them to be who they're going to
Yeah, absolutely. You want to teach your kids how to think, not what to think, and that's whether you're a parent or a teacher. I don't want you to just taking cue because a lot of times we taking cues from people and we're holding their word as law and they may not know what they're talking about. So I want you to be able to fish out the answers and know what the rigor of that looks like, and that's very important, very important. I I know, my father and I had a very, it was an emotional conversation. He's like, Elliot, I just want to tell you, I want to thank you for allowing me to still be able to talk to you, even though you figured out how to become a man without me. And I was so moved. We never had that conversation. We had it one time. I believe I was a freshman in college, and that's when he pretty much told me everything about his addiction, you know, what happened to my mother, their relationship, and how it was when she got killed, you know, and which is why he was being, you know, they thought they was trying to build a case on him for a murder because they had a lot of domestic stuff going on, and he had to talk about some hard stuff. But he thanked me for becoming a man anyway, you know, and he and I are in a great place, you know. And I had a lot of resentment. You know, it's one thing, okay, what happened to my mother, but I'm like, you were alive, you know, and you weren't strong enough to beat this for me, and it wounded my life, you know. But if I ever find myself, you know, in a predicament where I have my own children, like biological children, you know, that stuff is gonna pour and feed into me, those lessons, the things I talked about with my grandmother, cleaning, you know, and I just you soak all of it up and you give it back. And you give it back with love and compassion, and then whatever the result you live with, you know, because you're gonna tell kids exactly where to go, and they're gonna be like, nah, I'm going over here.
Right.
And you gotta let them do that. You gotta let them fail, quote unquote. That's the hardest thing about parenting, is that knowing your kid is making a wild choice, you gotta let them. And then when it happens and they come back to you, you don't allow your bravado or your machismo or your arrogance to be like, see, I told you, your ass is hard headed. You should have, nah, because that's what you're supposed to do. You're supposed to, you know, chart your own path, and then whatever happens or doesn't happen, if it works, if it doesn't work, I'm still here for you.
With that, this ends a great episode 3 of Conversations with Friends for this season. Elliot, we appreciate you as always coming on the channel, sharing your professional experience, but today you shared your personal experience in being able to share some personal things sometimes could be a little emotional, and we appreciate you, and we hope that the audience appreciate you and know that our personal stories, our journey is what makes us and shapes us who we are. Melodiq, any final thoughts?
Let your children down. It'll actually help you grow as a parent and as a person.
With that, take care, and we'll see you guys next time.
I love y'all. Back, baby. We back.